what changes our whole life is action. Why don't we take action? Fear. What do we got to do to get ourselves to do it? We got to make sure that we push ourselves through it by making a decision. The point in which change happens is a decision. Every change in your life that you want will come from something simple, a decision. People go, what does it take to change? Decide. But you go, oh, God sounds so simple and so basic. It was that easy to already have done it, Mr. Robbins. No, it is that easy and you're still not doing it because you are not putting yourself in a state to decide. See, a real decision is not like a preference. It's not like when you say, I'll try it and see. That's not a decision. Decision comes from Latin. It means like incision, to cut off from. Decision is when you cut off any possibility except the thing you've committed to. It's like that is it. So a real decision is what you got to make. When you make a real decision, life changes. But it's a real decision, you burn your bridges, you only move forward. Now, the way to get yourself there is to put yourself in state and condition it. Conditioning is this. Build the muscle. Do you do it one time? No. You do it a lot and you do beyond what you're comfortable with and the muscle expands, and now what used to be hard to do as the muscle grows is easy. That's the same thing with every other kind of muscle. But I'll give you one example. I don't approve of this research, but this is what they do. They take monkeys and they will take 4 of their fingers and tape them down. And then they take one finger and they bend it back and forth 10,000 times. And every time they bend this finger back and forth like this, use this as a metaphor. In your brain, for you to do this once, twice, you have to make connections between neurons in your brain. Neuron's a big word for nerve cells. So to do this, imagine, as a metaphor, it's not exactly like this, to do this once, you got to put a connection, a thin thread had to be grown between this neuron and this neuron, as an example, as a metaphor. Do it again, 2 thin threads. Do it 10,000 times, and guess what? You are wired to do this. Here's the point. They untape the monkey's fingers, and what does he do constantly? For no good reason. He's wired, conditioned to do this. Now, how does this relate to you? Well, how many of you go to work the same way every day? You drive on the same on-ramp, go the same direction, get off on the same on-ramp. How many got a pattern like that? Say, I. How many have had a day when you're supposed to go the opposite direction on the freeway or the road, but you're on the cell phone and your brain is at the lunch and you get on the same on-ramp going the same direction that you normally do that's the wrong way? Say, I. You're monkeys.
Many years ago at a talk, I was speaking to Rich DeVos when he was on his way up. Rich DeVos, the president of Amway, worth $5.3 billion today. He started off knocking on doors selling soap. And he was working his way up. And I asked him, I said, what have you found? What's the most important quality of successful people? And he said, Brian, he said, we found there's a direct relationship, I still remember him telling me this, between how quickly a person takes action on a new idea and how likely it is they'll ever take action on any idea at all. And so the action orientation is the critical thing. We watch people, everybody hears the same things, they hear the same ideas, but then we watch and we see how quickly they take action. And if a person takes action quickly on a new idea, the chances are they're going to be successful go up by hundreds of %. Now what most people do is they say, that's a great idea, it's a wonderful idea, I'm going to do that, ooh, I'm so excited. But before I apply it, I need to take a vacation to a wonderful place called Someday Isle. And so they go to Someday Isle, and they live on Someday Isle. And who are they surrounded with on Someday Isle? Other people on Someday Isle. And what is the chief topic of conversation on Someday Isle? Yes, it's their excuses. What's your excuse for not taking action? What's your excuse for not getting going? What's your excuse for not losing weight, getting out of debt, building your business, writing your book, getting your book finished, getting your damn book started? You know, in other words, what's your excuse? And they'll all share excuses. Oh, that's a good excuse. I haven't used that one for a long time. That'll take me another year. And so what they do is they sit around, and the bottom 80% of the population lives on Someday Isle most of their lives. They all have these great resolutions and these wonderful intentions, but what's their road to hell paved with? It's good intentions, and I'm going to do that someday. So rule number 1 for success is whatever you learn here, vote yourself off the island. No more Someday Isle. Either do it or don't do it.
Develop the ability to act. Take action. Not hasty if it isn't required, but don't lose much time. Here's the time to act. When the idea is hot and the emotion is strong. That's the time to act. You say, Mr. Rohn, I'd like to have a library like yours. See if you feel strong about that. What you got to do is get the first book and then get the second book. Before the feeling passes and before the idea gets dim, Action pronto. Action immediate. Action as soon as possible. Because if you don't, here's what happens. We call it the law of diminishing intent. We intend to when the idea strikes us. We intend to when the emotion is high. But now if you don't translate that into action fairly soon, now the intent starts to diminish. And a month from now it's cold. A year from now, can't be found. So act. Set up a discipline when the emotions are high and the idea is strong and clear and powerful. That's the time to set up the discipline. Somebody talks about good health and you're stirred. Say, right, I need to get a book on nutrition. Get the book before the idea passes and before the emotion gets cold. Go for the book. Start the library. Start the process. Fall on the floor. Do some push-ups. Action. Got to take action. Otherwise, the wisdom is wasted. Otherwise, the emotion soon passes. Unless you put it into a disciplined activity. Capture it. Disciplines is called how to capture the emotion and how to capture the wisdom and translate it into equity. Disciplines. Now, here's what's important about disciplines. All disciplines affect each other. In fact, here's a good philosophical phrase. Everything affects everything else. Nothing stands alone. Don't be naive in saying, well, this doesn't matter. I'm telling you, everything matters. There are some things that matter more than others, but there isn't anything that doesn't matter. We all pity the man who says, well, this is the only place I let down. Not true. Key to take home. Every letdown affects the rest of your performance. Every letdown affects the rest. This is part of the educational process on personal development. If you don't take the walk around the block, you probably won't do the apple a day. If you don't do the apple a day, you probably won't start building your library. If you don't build your library, you probably won't keep a journal, and you won't take pictures, and you won't do this, you won't do wise things with your money, won't do wise things with your time, won't do wise things with your possibilities and relationships, and the first thing you know, 6 years of that accumulated, and we say you have messed up. So the whole key to reversing that process now is to start picking up these disciplines. Now here's the positive side. Every new discipline affects the rest of your disciplines. Every new one affects the rest. That's why action is so important. The least action, the smallest action. Take it. Because when you start accomplishing and the value starts to return from that one action, it'll inspire you to do the next one and the next one and the next one. You start walking around the block, it'll inspire you to get an apple. Get an apple, it'll inspire you to get a book. Get a book, it'll inspire you to get a journal. Get a journal, it'll inspire you to grow, develop some skills. All disciplines affect each other. Every lack affects the rest. Every new affects the rest. The key is to diminish the lack and set up the new. And you've started a whole new life process. Also, one more thought on discipline. Here's the greatest value of discipline. Self-worth. Self-esteem. People are teaching self-esteem these days, but they don't connect it to disciplines. The least lack of discipline, and it starts to erode our psyche. One of the greatest temptations is to just ease up a little bit. The slightest lack of doing your best starts to erode the psyche. Instead of doing your best, doing just a little less than your best. Sure enough. You say, well, it's just going to affect my sales. No, it's going to affect your consciousness. It's going to affect your philosophy. Now you've begun in the slightest way to affect your own philosophy. Here's the problem with the least neglect. Neglect starts as an infection. And if you don't take care of it, it becomes a disease. And one neglect leads to another. And the worst of all, when neglect starts, it diminishes our self-worth, our self-confidence, our self-value. You say, well, how can I get back my self-respect? I'm telling you, you don't have to go to 29 classes. All you have to do is start the smallest discipline that now corresponds to your own philosophy, like I should, and I could, and I will. No longer will I let neglect stack up on me so that I will have the sorry scenario 6 years from now, giving some excuse instead of celebrating my progress. That's the key to discipline.